Hello everyone and welcome to our latest match preview. AFC Bournemouth are back at home this weekend versus Hull City. We're going to preview this game. John Sparks going to join me very soon. We're also going to have an opposition view. And of course, we'll take a look at that predicted 11 ahead of this game. But as always, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We've gone past 750 and let's try and see if we can get close to 800. At some point in the video, hit that like button. It really does help. So make sure you do that. And of course, at the end of the video, we want to get your comments, your lineups, and your score predictions. So make sure you put them in there down below. Let's get on with the preview. And on this match preview, I've got John Spark joining me. How you doing, John?
Yeah, doing all right. Thank you. How about you, Kirk?
Yeah, not too bad. And we need to say at this stage, as we're recording this for the preview, it is ahead of Hull City's midweek game. So just take that into consideration. We obviously haven't seen the press conference either. But it's a bit ironic, John, actually, that we're on this preview, because I can remember a few months ago standing in the Hull City Stadium to that amazing 0-0 draw. You had a good game of snooker beforehand in the pub. But yeah, I can still remember that day. It was a bad day, wasn't it?
It wasn't great, no. Turning out, it was nice to have a little bit of knock around, playing with your boy as well on the snooker table. That was about the most memorable thing that happened that day. I think was me playing a bit of snooker on camera for the back of the net. Hopefully this one will be a bit better. And kind of ironically, again, like you say, this is before Hull's game. So while we will be hoping to pick up 3 points against them on the weekend, I think we'll all be supporting Hull in the midweek game against Blackburn.
Definitely. But we need to reflect, don't we, on that weekend loss versus Luton. We did a watch along and let's just breeze through it again. We went into this game very confident. The fan base were confident, lots of clean sheet score predictions. But after 45 minutes, we were 2-0 down. We did come out fighting in the second half. Players came off the bench to impact. That included a goal from Morgan Rogers as well. And Emi Marcondes kept his goal scoring going. But we run out of steam. I felt we were going to with all the effort we put in that last 45 and the sucker punch with the last kick of the game. And Luton took the result 3-2.
Yeah, I was another one that predicted a win. I mean, I went for 2-1, but I was also thinking I would be happily take a draw. And, for 96 minutes, despite the bad start, that's looked like what was going to happen. But best player on the pitch did come up with a fantastic goal to finish it off. And, with the way they dominated us for, a good chunk of the first half, I can't really hold against them deserving the 3 points in that game. And, it just goes to show, as much as we did start decently for the first sort of 5 to 10 minutes, and we had a good 40 minutes in the second half, that's not enough to play and beat a really good side away from home. And the crowd were well on top of that game, really gave them a lift. And it was a hell of a game for the neutral, but for us, obviously, felt like a massive kick in the teeth in the last seconds of the game. So, there's some positives to build on, but there's also a lot there that sort of points to the problems that people have got at the moment with maybe a few players, maybe the way Parker's building the squad, building the team on a match day, and it's certainly it's been a long time since we looked comfortable at the top of the table, and obviously we may well not be in the top two when this game starts on Saturday.
Scott Parker said that he praised the players for the fight, but he did say there was lots or parts of the game that he really wasn't happy with. But we've seen it quite a lot now. I think we're still with Scott Parker and the project, but for me, it's the game. It's everything either side of 41 minutes and 51 minutes. We seem to be good in that 10-minute spell either side of half time and afterwards. That's our most prominent time to score goals. But everything outside of that, I mean, flick a coin. You really don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the times I think it's difficult to sort of see exactly why that happens as well. Like I mentioned, I think the first 5 to 10 minutes of that Luton game was actually really good. I thought the counter pressing was outstanding. I mentioned that on the watch along, and we put them on a hell of a lot of pressure for that period. And then it all sort of dissipated. Luton were always going to have periods in the game, but they had pretty much the entirety of the first half after we sort of backed off them a bit. And it does a lot of this, I think, comes down to Solanke and how he's utilised at times. And he was marshalled incredibly well in that game against Luton. We weren't able to get him involved enough at all. And you look at other games we haven't done well, like Preston, and he got completely marked out of that one as well. I think Blackburn, I don't remember him really being involved too much. That was another one where the defence got a hold of him. And if we're not able to utilise Solanke well enough and get him involved and get people to support him like we really didn't for long periods of Luton, then we are going to struggle. When we were playing the ball around fluidly, when we were, getting our passing game going. I mean, you only got to look at the second goal. I think was a really well worked passing move, but that doesn't happen enough in games. And we're seeing for long periods exactly sort of what Fulham fans said, we were going to, in quotes, look forward to for a lot of Parker ball this season. And it's plain and obvious to see for most of us that we think this team is capable of more, and they're just not, for whatever reason, it's not quite being fulfilled at this point.
We did just touch then on that 0-0 at Hull City earlier on in the season, and it has been those type of teams that we struggled against lower down in the table and dropped points against. And Hull City this season, currently 20th, 23 points. They haven't won since November the 27th. Their form guide currently is draw, lose, lose, lose. And what's been your thoughts on Hull City being promoted to the Championship and how they've done this season, John?
Well, they were promoted top of the league, so there was certainly an expectation of them. I certainly remember Dan throwing a curveball in our early season prediction, saying they finished in the top 12. I never saw that coming, and it certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen. But they did go through a purple patch recently, where they got I think it was 4 wins on the bounce, 6 unbeaten. Where things look to improve, where they finally changed to a back three, which a lot of fans have been calling for quite some time. The manager eventually caved in, and it, surprisingly enough, worked for a while. And now they're on another period where they're not getting any goals. Not getting any wins, rather, at all. And, I say not getting any goals. They are the second lowest scorers in the entire division. Only Barnsley have scored fewer than Hull have. And they're also not much of a threat from set plays either. They scored 80% of their goals from open play. So, they're probably going to do enough to stay up. But there is a lot going on behind the scenes as well with Hull. I think the manager isn't all that well liked anyway by the fans for whatever reason. It towards when they got relegated last time, he obviously wasn't too successful there. And then there's the takeover going on, which was apparently meant to have gone through already, but that seems to have been stalled somewhat. There's a lot of confusion going on there. So that might be causing the unrest that's leading to poor performances at the moment. And, we'll be hoping to take advantage of that.
Well, for our next opposition view on Cherries Red Army, John did catch up with Ant Northgraves from the Hull and Back podcast to get some inside information ahead of this game. Let's check it out now.
Hi, Ant. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us on the opposition preview. If you just introduce yourself and your podcast, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, well, obviously my name's Ant. I'm host and sort of co-founded the Hull and Back podcast, December 2020. It was basically just an off-the-cuff thing. We've never done podcasting before. We've got no journalist experience. We didn't do anything to sort of for clout or for views. We did it because it was a way to talk about the football club during a pandemic. And, we couldn't attend games anymore. And because I moved to Leeds, I couldn't really have a season pass anymore. So it was more or less to replace them chats in the pub that you'd have before the game, and it's just sort of caught on from there. Really, we've got bigger and better. We stretched out to YouTube. We're doing video content. We've got sponsors. It's got a bit mad, really. We just hit 5,000 views, which is about 4,099 more than we expected to have. So, we're sort of coasting along. We're meeting some amazing content creators like yourselves as well along the way. We've got quite a few contacts within other clubs now to find some more in-depth, detailed stuff about other teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, we all love talking about our clubs first and foremost, but just talking about football is great at any moments. So at the time of recording, it's coming off the back of not the greatest result, obviously, at the weekend against Stoke. How did that game go for you? And obviously, prior to the Bournemouth game, you'll be going up against Blackburn as well. So how do you see these how do you see the last game going, and obviously Blackburn as well?
Today's performance was probably, if not our worst performance of the season so far, which was pretty surprising considering how well and how sort of enthusiastic we seemed when we played Everton in the Cup. This was an absolute shadow of the team that played against Everton, and there wasn't really that much in terms of changes to the starting 11. So it was quite strange, really. A few of our big hitters weren't really at the races, like Sir George Honeyman and Keane Lewis Potter was marked out the game. I mean, credit to Stoke. They'd obviously done their research on us. They had a formation that sort of seemed to nullify what limited threat we had, but at the same time exposed our defensive weaknesses. They got in behind on the counter-attack quite a lot, exposed our attacking wing-backs per se, and got in one-on-one situations with the centre-backs. It could have been about 5 or 6 today. Sean McLaughlin was brilliant with some last-ditch tackle. I think he made about 10 blocks that game. It was amazing, but yeah, no, we weren't very good. It doesn't give us much confidence going into games against Blackburn and Bournemouth. It's quite worrying, because if we play to that similar standard, we'll come on the back of a couple of hammerings. But hopefully this kicks us into gear. I mean, the club's sort of stagnating at the minute because obviously we've got a takeover that's supposed to have gone through before Christmas and then before New Year and before the next game, and it's seeming to drag on. And I don't know if it started to sort of drip onto the players, this sort of anxiety about it, their future or what's going to happen with the manager kind of thing. And it's quite worrying. So hopefully we can at least have a positive performance against Blackburn, if not a result, and then see where we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed for you for the rest of the season, obviously, except for the game that's about to come up against us. Speaking of the season, I suppose as a whole, it must be a bit awkward or a bit odd at the moment as a whole fan of the last couple of seasons, because you talk about the takeover and certainly the owners aren't popular, to put it mildly, at the club. And, before obviously success last season in going up, there's been an interesting relationship between the fans and the manager. Recently you went through a very nice purple patch of going through, was it 4 or 5 wins in a row? But that obviously has dropped off and no wins since the end of November. How do you think the season has gone overall? Is it meeting the kind of expectations that you had as to how you would survive or not this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one because, obviously we had a transfer embargo put on us in summer. I think the club chose to take a loan from the EFL instead of accepting offers for Keane Lewis Potter, which in itself is admirable because he's some talent, so it is good to keep him. But it meant that we couldn't spend any transfer fees on players, so we sort of had to recruit via freebies and loanies. It didn't really improve our squad. We kind of just filled it with squad players, which means that obviously you're coming up from League One. Yeah, we won the title last season. We played very well. But coming into the Championship, which is significantly higher level, we needed recruitments and we needed help. I mean, we signed a lot of players, don't get me wrong, but like I say, they didn't really add to the first team. They weren't coming in and being instant starters because they didn't really improve what we had. So if we hadn't have had the embargo, where I'm going with this, I think we could have probably been doing a lot better than we was. But given the circumstances, we all knew that we was going to be in a relegation scrap. So as long as we're not in the bottom 3, it's fine. A couple of points deductions probably helping us along the way, but as it stands, we're doing okay. We just need hopefully for this takeover to come through so we can add some new players.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to take advantage of any situation you're given, regardless of how unfortunate it is for other teams. Of course, you're mentioning, players like Keane Lewis-Potter, who, certainly I remember first game of the season beating Preston. He caught the eye, definitely. But George Honeyman was a player that I know I was sort of looking out for as someone that started in League One and obviously was injured for the first part of this season. Are there any other players that have stood out for Hull so far this season?
Yeah, it's quite weird you mentioned Honeyman today because he actually had a really poor game today. But realistically, a couple of surprise names that I'll throw in. I mean, Greg Docherty is usually the epitome of consistency. He's an absolute workhorse. He'll run from the first minute to the last minute, and his performance levels are usually at the same standard. He was unusually poor today as well. But in terms of surprise, we've got a centre half called Sean McLaughlin, who's a young Irish lad who's sort of benefited from the changing system. We started to adopt a three at the back, which has Jacob Greaves, Sean McLaughlin, and Deshaun Bernard as the back three. And since McLaughlin's come in, he has been absolutely phenomenal. Like we're talking about adding other centre backs, maybe some more experienced centre halves, because we've got a very young defence. But if we did sign a new experienced centre half, they won't be able to get into the squad because this guy is that good. He's just, at the moment, he's sort of keeping the score down. He certainly did today, and he's helping sort of give that platform for Deshaun Bernard and Jacob Greaves, who are more comfortable in possession, to take the ball up the pitch, sort of ball playing centre halves. It gives them that ability to do that. And then another one is who gets quite a lot of flack from our fan base. Really, he's a bit Marmite. Richie Smallwood, the captain, had doubts at this level whether or not he could keep up with the pace of the division. But as today showed, we really missed him without him in the squad and his ability to sort of break up play and screen the back three, protect them. So he has been probably one of our best performers this season as well. So, like you say, other than the obvious Keane Lewis-Potter and George Honeyman, we've got a couple of underrated gems that maybe not a few people would pick up on or expect.
How do you see it going? Do you see a similar result, still 0-0? What rating do you think, or how good do you think your chances are going to Bournemouth and taking at least a point home?
I don't think we're very confident as a fan base at the minute. It's a bit, there's frustrations creeping in, like I say, because this takeover seems to take an age to get signed off. It depends what squad turns up, because it's weird. We played against Everton, and I know they're not playing the best at the minute, Everton, and they've just sacked the manager, but they're still a Premier League team with millions of pounds worth of quality, and we more than matched them for 120 minutes. It took a bit of a weldy from Andros Townsend to win it for him in the end. But if we can play like that against the likes of Everton, and like we say, we won 4 wins on the bounce earlier on in the season, and went 6 unbeaten in that span. I just think that I don't know if it's anxiety from the takeover, or it's maybe a bit of lethargic, sort of, a bit of fatigue creeping in because of the COVID cases we had over Christmas. We are a very small squad, and they are put through the paces quite a bit. We do try and run a lot, so I mean, the thing is, we say this, but we haven't actually been hammered by any team this season. I think QPR beat us 3-0, and that's our heaviest defeat. And we actually played quite well against QPR, and it flattered them, that scoreline. I mean, it could have easily been 4 or 5 today, but, we kept it to 2. So hopefully we don't come out of the Bournemouth game on the back of like a 4 or 5-0 drubbing. I mean, I went to the 6-1, was it, in the Premier League? Yeah, that one enjoyable. So I do remember that. So hopefully not a repeat of that one. We'd obviously take a point. We'd snap your hand off for a point right now. But if we're going to lose, at least stay in the game for 90 minutes and at least put some sort of performance in that we can build off. That would be my absolute minimum, I think.
So, I suppose based on that, what would be your score prediction?
Okay, I would probably go for I'm going to try and be optimistic, but I can't. I'm going to say logically, I think it's going to be a comfortable 2-0 win for Bournemouth. I just don't think we have it in us right now. Going off how it is right now, obviously, if we make signings between now and then, it might change, kind of thing. But the kind of limbo situation we're stuck in, and the uncertainty, I think, is just going to contribute to a repeat performance of today, unfortunately. It also depends what happens against Blackburn, I suppose. Confidence could take a hammering after that one as well. So as long as we don't get hammered, a 2-0 win is what I'll say.
Okay, no problem. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Ant, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
No worries. Thank you. You too.
Thank you to Ant there for giving us that latest opposition view. And interestingly, John, they've only beaten one team in the top six, and that was Middlesbrough. Some interesting stats for Hull City. They've only conceded more than 2 goals twice this season, but they also have struggled to score 13 times this season. That's the most of any team in the league. What did you take out of the opposition view and those stats?
Yeah, well, like I said, they're not the greatest goal scorers by any means, and their top scorer, and one of the names that obviously a lot of people that follow Hull to even a small extent will have known as Keane Lewis Potter, who's got 5 goals and 3 assists. So he's their top provider and their top goal scorer. George Honeyman, who I mentioned on the opposition review, also is a name that I was familiar with from being one of the best players in League One last season, and also brought up one of their one or two of their defenders, I believe, that has also shone quite a bit this season as well. They're going to struggle because of that embargo. They weren't able to sign maybe what they wanted earlier on in the season, and they've actually just sold John McGuinness to Wigan already in January, so I'm sure they'll be looking to do some amount of business to try and strengthen the side. They are one of the weaker teams in the division. It's just unfortunately a fact of when you come up, you're expected to be fighting against relegation. At the moment, they're being successful. There's no doubt about that. If they stay up in 21st place, they'll have had a great season. So, they will come to us as massive underdogs. And as Ant said, he's not confident that they're going to get anything from this game, but that doesn't mean they can't still pick up a point. I mean, we thought we'd go there and beat them comfortably at the time we were doing. They're the first team this season we failed to score against, and one of the very few that we failed to score against. So we can't take them for granted. We haven't got more than a point off all 3 promoted sides so far this season. And it doesn't matter who it is in the division, you need to turn up and perform on the day. So if we don't do that, we won't get 3 points.
Right. We got the predicted Scott Parker predicted 11 coming up. And do you know what, John? There's positions up for grabs in this game. And I think this is a real opportunity to just maybe throw out the 10-point plan book that Scott Parker might have. And maybe we just go on the front foot from minute one. We play more attacking players in this game. And we're going to show that predicted 11 you've chosen. Let's see what everyone else thinks. So I've handed over to John for this predicted 11 this week. And you can see on the screen, we've got Mark Travers in goal, Jack Stacey right back, Gary Cahill, Lloyd Kelly, Leif Davis, Jeff Lerma to stay where he is, then Marcondes with hopefully Phil Billing being fit for this game, Ryan Christie off the right, Morgan Rogers, think he deserves a start, and Dom Solanke up top. I like this formation. We're trying to predict what Scott Parker will do. But John, I think it's an opportunity to get Morgan Rogers. When is he going to get an opportunity to actually show something at home with space? And I think today or this weekend will be an opportunity for him to do that. But talk us through that starting 11 you've gone for.
Okay, well, the back 5 sort of picks itself so much, quite to that extent, I think. Jordan Zamora is obviously probably going to be back with the squad by this point and training again, but they're out. Zimbabwe are out of AFCON now, but I think given the travel that they'll have had to do, particularly one very long car journey, I believe, because they couldn't get a plane ticket sorted when he originally was heading off to Cameroon, they'll probably rest him for this game. I think there's no need to rush him back, I don't think, quite so quickly, when Davis had probably his most all-round best game for us, I feel, against Luton. Cahill, I think I personally would probably be dropping for Mepham at this point, just for this game. I think he has looked a bit off it in the last couple of games, and I think Chris Mepham has done pretty much nothing wrong at all when he's been in the side this season. So I think he deserves to be given a shot when someone isn't necessarily performing at their best. Jeff Lerma, probably the first name on the team sheet. Billing, if he's fit, I would expect to come back in. And Lewis Cook, there's a lot of talk online about Lewis Cook's performance. I think he's not being played in his right position. I think he's also not being given the opportunity to play the football that he is best at, and I feel as though he's more likely to be able to do that from a number 6 position. However, I think Scott Parker has shown that he prefers Lerma there, despite the fact that I think Lerma probably more effective for us as more of a box-to-box number 8 that's able to influence defensively and offensively. He doesn't quite get us forward as much, obviously, in that number 6 spot. Christie, I don't think there's anyone really to compete against him at the moment. And Solanke, again, if it wasn't Lerma, he's the first name on the team sheet. And then Rodgers is an interesting one. I think Jayden Anthony needs to be rested, and he needs to really drill home into him that if you don't perform, you're not going to start. His inconsistency within a match is quite outstanding. The fact that he will pull off like an amazing crossfield ball into the box for Christie to almost score early on in a game, and then just can't play a 5-yard pass 5 times in a row, or take a first touch 5 times in a row. It's just incredible, the basics that he won't get right and then pull off a wonder pass. And he needs to sort out that consistency. If he does, he's a Premier League player in waiting as far as I'm concerned. But until he gets that sorted, he needs to, he's not going to get any further than where he is at the moment. He's going to sit on the bench for a little while. Morgan Rodgers, funny enough, the only other start that he's had for us, I believe, was away at Peterborough, where he had one good chance. That was basically the only decent chance of the match, apart from a slanky hit in the woodwork, I think. But this will be his first home start, I believe. And again, it's against a newly promoted side. And he hasn't really had too many opportunities to really show us what he can do. He's had like moments where it looks like he's totally beat a player. He obviously scored in the game against Luton. Absolutely chuffed for him that he got his first goal for us. But this will be his big opportunity and possibly his last opportunity to really make an impact in that position and try and nail down a spot getting ahead of Jayden Anthony. Because Jayden Anthony, despite his inconsistency, has got credit in the bank, and he is the favoured player in that position. So if Rodgers can perform in this game, link up well with the likes of Billing and Davis and Solanke, then he may well be able to spend that place for a few games going forward. But if he doesn't perform, he'll be hooked by 60 minutes, and we'll see Jayden Anthony in that spot probably the rest of the season. It's a big game for him if he does start, which I hope he does. And yeah, but interesting as well as putting Billy Marcondes there again, because we haven't had that since the first few games of the season. And that is probably the most offensive pair of 8s that we can possibly put in there. Obviously, Billing fantastic on his day, and Marcondes can pop up anywhere with anything. And obviously, he's got 4 in his last 2 games. So, he's one of the only other goal threats that we've got in this team, apart from Solanke and Billing. So, certainly more offensive. And yeah, I'm hoping that I'll bring 3 points and at least a couple of goals on Saturday.
We're going to lock it in. That is our predicted 11 for this game. Do you agree, disagree? And I'm sure there's potentially going to be a shout out for Jamal Lowe as well. But do let us know in the comments. Okay, then, John, 2 big games coming up before that FA Cup tie against Bournemouth. And for me, 1 game at a time. But we need 6 from 6 to get this promotion push back on track. Hull City on Saturday, score prediction. How you feeling?
Yeah, well, I mean, I put out a tweet when and you saw about our run in April, particularly after the West Brom game got pushed back 2 months into April. We've got the rest of this month, February and March, to really rack up points, because if we don't, it'll be a hell of a nail-biting finish to the season. And we're now going against Hull, newly promoted, Barnsley, worst team in the division. So if we do not get 6 points from those 2 games, yeah, it's not great. It's not great form. So for a team that's expected to go up automatically, so we really need to push on with this. And I certainly expect 3 points on Saturday.
Score prediction?
I'm going to go 3-0.
Going to match that 100% straight in there. 3-0, 3 goals, and hopefully an early goal as well. Thank you, John, for joining me on this match preview.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone who's checked out this latest video. Let us know your score predictions in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button. But from me and John on this latest video, we'll see you soon. Up the cherries.